Good evening, students. So good evening all of you. So welcome to Unacademy EAMCET YouTube channel. So myself Dr.Rajendra Prasad, biology educator on Unacademy platform, students, and I have been teaching biology to medical aspirants from last 13 years. So in today's class we'll be discussing about the topic that is the respiration. That we'll be discussing about the one of the step in the respiration, that is glycolysis. We'll be discussing about the glycolysis in this step. So Unacademy is providing free live classes. At the same time, it is also providing the free YouTube classes daily, students. So apart from that, a well-designed course. So a well-designed course is going on Unacademy Plus platform, students. So let us see what is the importance of this Unacademy Plus platform. So this is Unacademy Plus. So this is for the students who subscribe to our courses, students. So this is especially for the students who subscribe to our courses. So in this, so what is the importance of our Unacademy Plus subscription is, so premium content. So premium content will be available at affordable price. So structured live courses and dedicated live doubt clearing sessions will be taking place, students. Then quizzes will be conducted at regular intervals. So quizzes will be conducted at regular intervals. Lectures will be in batches. You can join the batch of your interest, students. So test series. So test series also will be conducted for daily practice papers and full length mock tests. So these all will be available at affordable price actually. So if you are interested, you can use my code Rajendra Live so that you can get the use my code Rajendra Live and purchase the 1 month trial plan of 2,250 rupees, students. So there is recently one batch was started. Name of the batch is called as a Telugu batch. So in this batch, so all the educators you can see the above educators, all the educators will be taking classes in our native language, in Telugu language. So they will be taking the classes in the Telugu language. And what is the purpose of this batch is to complete the syllabus. So main purpose is to complete the syllabus, and tips and tricks also will be given by educator students. If you just take this 1 month trial plan, which is costing around 2,250 rupees, use my code Rajendra Live so that you can get the cost for 2,250 rupees. And already one batch is running for it's called comprehensive batch. In the comprehensive batch, I am taking biology course, I is taking the physics, and I is taking the chemistry class. And what is the importance of this batch is complete syllabus will be covered, tips and tricks will be given by educators, and topic wise practice papers and full and mock tests also will be conducted. And all this you can get for 1 month plan of 2,250 rupees, students. So you can use my code Rajendra Live so that you can get the prescribed course for the particular amount, that's 2,250 rupees, students. So this is about Unacademy's the comprehensive batch, and there is a long-term batch is also available, the 6 months plan, and it is costing around a very less amount of 10,125 rupees, and there is a 12 months plan. So 12 months plan costing around 12,375 rupees, students. So this is a very less amount than compared to the other online courses which are available nowadays. So very less amount, students. I suggest you to purchase these plans. So if you are interested to take these plans, you can use my code Rajendra Live to purchase this 6 months plan for 10,125 rupees. At the same time, so 12 months plan for 12,375 rupees. So this is about our Unacademy Plus subscription. So let us discuss the today's session on the glycolysis. So respiration. So we'll be discussing about the lesson that is respiration. That lesson respiration will discuss about the glycolysis today in this class, students. So let us see the respiration. So what happens in respiration? So respiration, what is the main purpose of respiration is, the main purpose of respiration in case of higher organism is to synthesize ATP. So the main purpose of respiration is to get energy. So that energy is given in the form of ATP. So that ATP is utilized by the organism for the different activities like running, like or eating food, or walking from one place to another place. So all the activities needs energy in the form of ATP, and that ATP is provided through the process that is called as respiration. So during the process of respiration, what happens? So during the process of respiration, you can see this is the glucose molecule. So glucose molecule is broken down in the presence of oxygen. So it is a respiration is an oxidation process. So respiration is no doubt it is an oxidation process. It is an oxidation process which involves which takes place in the presence of oxygen. So opposite to this is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a reduction process. It is a carbon reduction actually. So here it is, the respiration is an oxidation process. So during the process of respiration, what happens is glucose is broken down to produce 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of H2O to liberate ATP. So during the process of respiration, what happens is, so glucose molecules, if you see the glucose molecules, so the glucose molecules having the bonds, if you see the shape of glucose. For example, now let us see the one structure of glucose. So what I want to show you is how the energy is produced, in which way how the energy is produced from the glucose. That only I want to show you here. So what happens here is, so here what happens here is, if you see here in this particular structure, so this is a structure, typical structure of a glucose. So yes, let's come back. So in a typical structure of a glucose, if you see the typical structure of a glucose, so glucose is a 6 carbon compound. So if you see the 6 carbon compound, now this is a 6 carbon compound that is called as a glucose. So glucose is having the aldehyde group as a reducing group. So this is the aldehyde group having reducing group. So in this glucose, what happens, you can see there are different bonds are present. So different bonds like the carbon-carbon. So the bond is present like carbon-carbon. So there is a bond present between carbon-carbon. So we have bond between carbon-hydrogen. You can see here there is a bond also existing between carbon and hydrogen. So there is also bond existing between carbon-oxygen. So like that, how the energy is liberated means, within the glucose, when bond between the carbon is broken down, or when bond between the carbon-hydrogen is broken down, or when bond between the carbon and oxygen is broken down, at that time what happens, some energy is liberated. That energy is called as, liberated in the form of ATP. So how the energy is liberated means, energy is liberated because of the breakdown of the bonds that are present between the carbon-carbon or carbon-hydrogen or carbon-oxygen. Due to breakdown of these bonds only, some energy is liberated. That energy is altogether is liberated in the form of the ATP. So like this, what happens is, during the process of respiration, the energy is liberated in the form of ATP. That how that energy is liberated is, so it is because of the breakdown of the bonds of the glucose molecule. So what type of bonds? Between the bond between the carbon-carbon, bond between the carbon-hydrogen, or bond between the carbon-oxygen. So due to breakdown of these three bonds, like between carbon-carbon, carbon-hydrogen, and as well as carbon-oxygen, what happens is, there is a liberation of energy will be taking place. So what happens is, liberation of energy will be taking place during the process of the respiration. So with the help of energy, that energy is utilized by the human beings for their activities or animals for their activities. So this respiration process, so cellular respiration process, this single step, so this whole equation, so this whole equation takes place in 3 steps actually. So in that the first step is called as, altogether is called aerobic respiration. In that the first step is called as the glycolysis. So it takes place, the respiration, cellular respiration takes place in 3 stages. First one is called as a glycolysis, second one is called as a Krebs cycle, and third one is called as a electron transport system. So electron transport system. So these cellular respiration takes place in 3 different stages. First stage is called as a glycolysis on 3 steps. First step is called glycolysis, second step is called Krebs cycle, third step is called as a electron transport system. So you can see here, first step is called as a glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport system. So in today's class we will see about the glycolysis. So let us discuss a little bit in detail about the glycolysis in this today's class. So this cycle now which we are seeing on the board, so that is the glycolysis. So what is the meaning of this term? Glycolysis means it is the breakdown. So it is the breakdown of glucose molecule here. So breakdown of glucose molecule. So breakdown of glucose molecule. So breakdown of glucose. So breakdown of glucose involves the glycolysis. So this glycolysis takes place. So glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. So glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. So glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. So whatever enzymes required for glycolysis, all are present in the cytoplasm of cell. Because of that reason, what happens is this glycolysis is taking place in the cytoplasm of the cell. So this glycolysis was first identified by three scientists, that is called Amberden, Meyerhoff and Parnas. So that is the reason it is also called as EMP pathway. So glycolysis is also called as EMP pathway. It is also called as a EMP pathway. So E indicates Amberden, Meyerhoff and Parnas. Okay. So E indicates Amberden, so Meyerhoff and Parnas. So these are the names of three scientists. So three scientists, EMP pathway, Amberden, Meyerhoff and Parnas. So these three are the scientists who first identified that about the steps in the glycolysis. That's why it is also called as the EMP pathway. So what is this glycolysis means? It is a breakdown of glucose. Breakdown of glucose is called as a glycolysis. And where is this glycolysis taking place? Inside the plant or animal cell. So glycolysis takes place in plant cell as well as in animal cell also, in the cytoplasm of the cell. So glycolysis is also called as a EMP pathway. So that was first identified by three scientists together identified. It is called Amberden, Meyerhoff and Parnas pathway. That's why it is called EMP pathway. Then, so glycolysis is a partial. It is a partial oxidation of glucose. In glycolysis, what happens is only partial oxidation of glucose will be taking place. Full glucose will not be broken. Only partial oxidation of glucose will be takes place. Okay. So let us see the steps of glycolysis. So very first step of glycolysis, you can see glucose. Glucose is 6-carbon compound. So this 6-carbon compound is converted into glucose 6-phosphate, and this is the first enzyme that is involved in the glycolysis is a enzyme. The name of the enzyme is called as a hexokinase. So hexokinase is the name of the enzyme which is involved in the conversion of glucose. So glucose is converted into glucose 6-phosphate. You can see glucose is converted into glucose 6-phosphate. For that, the ATP is utilized in here. So ATP is utilized so that the phosphate is attached to glucose at 6th position. That's why the name is called glucose 6-phosphate. Then the glucose 6-phosphate is again it is converted by, it is isomerized into fructose 6-phosphate. So glucose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 6-phosphate. Then fructose 6-phosphate is converted into the fructose 1,6-phosphate. So here there is one important enzyme is involved here. So what is the name of the enzyme is? The name of the enzyme here, fructose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 1,6-phosphate in the presence of an enzyme that is called as a phosphofructokinase. So phosphofructokinase is the enzyme. So actually in glycolysis, phosphofructokinase, so this enzyme has its own importance. So it is called as a regulatory enzyme. So phosphofructokinase is known as a regulatory enzyme of glycolysis. So you have to remember this. So which is considered as a regulatory enzyme of which enzyme regulates the glycolysis, which enzyme regulates the glycolysis, like that is asking multiple choice questions. So phosphofructokinase is the enzyme which regulates the glycolysis. So it is a regulatory enzyme. Phosphofructokinase is the regulatory enzyme. So for fructose, during this process what happens, fructose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 1,6-biphosphate, means additional phosphate is attached to the first carbon. Already phosphate is present in 6th carbon. Now the phosphate is again attached to the first carbon to form a compound that is called as a fructose 1,6-biphosphate. So this formation of fructose 1,6-biphosphate is catalyzed by enzyme. The name of the enzyme is called phosphofructokinase. So phosphofructokinase is known as a regulatory enzyme. It regulates the glycolysis mechanism. It is a regulatory enzyme. Then this fructose 1,6-biphosphate is further converted into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. You can see here it is a glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is also called as a triose phosphate. So it is a 3-carbon compound, glyceraldehyde. So glyceraldehyde is a 3-carbon compound. So glyceraldehyde G3P. So glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. It is a triose. to the third carbon of the glyceraldehyde, phosphorus is attached. So it is the simplest carbohydrate. So glyceraldehyde is the simplest sugar, which is the simplest sugar. Means we have to clearly remember that simplest sugar is glyceraldehyde is the simplest sugar. So glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is called as a triose phosphate. Triose means 3 carbon compound. To the 3 carbon compound at third carbon phosphorus is attached. So out of all the sugars, which is the sugar which is has simplest structure is glyceraldehyde. Why it is called simplest sugar is because it has only 3 carbons. That is the reason it is the simplest. It is not so complex. If you see glucose has 6 carbon. It is not the simplest. So certainly the glyceraldehyde has 3 carbon compound. It is the simplest sugar. Now this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate can also be undergo reversible reaction to produce dihydroxystone phosphate. So DHEAP, that is represented as DHEAP, dihydroxyphosphate. So this is also it is also 3 carbon compound only, but it will be having ketone group actually, whereas here this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate has aldehyde group. That is the only difference in their structure. So both are this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxystone phosphate, both are functional isomers. They have same molecular formula, difference only in the functional groups actually. So this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is further converted into 1,3-biphosphoglycerate. So glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is further reduced to 1,3-biphosphoglycerate. During this process, what happens is there is NADH is released. So NADH is released in this particular step. So here, when fructose 1,6-biphosphate is converted into glyceraldehyde, we will be getting two molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So the 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde phosphate. So here 2 NAD plus is utilized, 2 NAD plus to produce 2 NADH. 2 molecules of NADH is also produced. Then in next step, 2 molecules of triose, 2 molecules of 1,3-biphosphoglyceric acid. Now the 2 molecules of 1,3-biphosphoglyceric acid. So same thing here. 2 molecules of 1,3-biphosphoglyceric acid is again further converted into 2 molecules of 3-phosphoglyceric acid. So again here the ADP is converted into ADP. So 2 molecules of ADP is utilized to produce 2 ATP. So 3-phosphoglyceric acid. So 3-phosphoglyceric acid is converted into 2-phosphoglyceric acid, and 2-phosphoglyceric acid in this step, the liberation of water molecule is taking place. You have to remember that in which step liberation of water molecule is taking place, like that in multiple choice question they'll ask you. So 2-phosphoglyceric acid is converted into phosphoenol pyruvate. It is written as PEP, phosphoenol pyruvate actually. So 2-phosphoglyceric acid. So 2-phosphoglycerate is converted into phosphoenol pyruvate, and this phosphoenol pyruvate is further converted into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. So like this, what happens is during the process of glycolysis, what happens is, so glucose is partially oxidized. Glucose is 6 carbon compound. This 6 carbon compound is giving rise to pyruvate or pyruvic acid. So how many molecules of pyruvic acid or pyruvate? 2 molecules of pyruvate. So if you see pyruvate is a 3 carbon compound. So glucose is a 6 carbon compound. This 6 carbon compound is broke down into pyruvate, that is a 3 carbon compound. So partial oxidation, only partial oxidation. So that is the reason at the end of glycolysis, as pyruvate is formed, it is a 3 carbon compound. That's why glycolysis is called as it is a partial oxidation process. Only half of the glucose is broken down. Partial oxidation process actually is a partial oxidation process. Then if you see the number of ATP produced in glycolysis, okay, ATP produced or net ATP, number of ATP produced, or we call it as net ATP. So net ATP. So finally and how much net ATP produces? Finally we will be getting the 2 ATP molecules. So if you see here, so if you go back and see here, in this step 1 ATP is utilized. So 1 ATP is utilized. So 1 ATP is utilized. Here in another step, here you see one ATP is another ATP is utilized. So two ATP is utilized. So one more ATP is utilized in this step. One more ATP is utilized. So finally two ATP is utilized, and here you see two ATP are produced here, and again here again 2 ATP is produced. So total, so 4 ATP produced, 2 ATP utilized. So based on that, so finally net ATP produced is net ATP will be 2. Net ATP produced will be 2. So that is the reason I have written here 2 ATP. So finally the net ATP produced at the end of glycolysis is 2 ATP. At the same time, two molecules of, we can see also two molecules of two molecules of NADH. So two molecules of NADH. So at end of glycolysis, so at end of glycolysis 2 ATP and 2 molecules of NADH. 2 molecules of NADH both are produced. So both are produced. These are the final products. So with this, the cycle will continue for the next cycle, that is called as a Krebs cycle. So that's what happening. So once again you see here what happens in glycolysis, what happens in cellular respiration. So let us see from starting. So cellular respiration, what happens in respiration? So whatever glucose that is present, that is synthesized by the plants, or in humans whatever glucose that is obtained through diet, the glucose is broken down in the presence of oxygen. Such process is called as an oxidation process. So respiration is an oxidation process. So as it is taking place in the presence of oxygen, it is called as an oxidation process. So during this oxidation process, during the process of respiration, what happens is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and water molecules, 6 molecules, and ATP energy is liberated. That energy is required for human different activities of the human. Then how this ATP is produced, that is the question. So how this energy is liberated, from where this energy is produced. So in glucose, this is the typical structure of glucose. In the glucose you see there is a bonds, different bonds are present, like carbon-carbon bond, carbon-hydrogen bond, carbon-oxygen bond. So when these bonds are broken down, some energy is liberated. This all energy together is trapped and represented in the form of ATP. So that's what happening during the respiration. So we are getting energy. From where this energy is getting? The energy is getting because of the breakdown of the bonds between the carbon-carbon, between the carbon-hydrogen, between carbon-oxygen. So due to breakdown of these bonds only we are getting some amount of energy. So like this, during the cellular respiration ATP is produced, and this cellular respiration, it is not taking place at a time. It is a step-by-step process. It involves 3 major steps. That is, first step is glycolysis, second one is Krebs cycle, third one is called electron transport chain. So let us see what is happening in glycolysis. In glycolysis, we are discussing what happens, breakdown of glucose. So glycolysis takes place in cytoplasm of the cells, we have seen here. It is also called as EMP pathway. It was given by 3 scientists named as Amberden, Meyerhoff and Parnas. So that is the reason it is also called EMP pathway. In glycolysis, what happened? Partial oxidation of glucose is taking place. So here the glucose is converted into glucose 6-phosphate. So the primary enzyme, the first enzyme or primary enzyme involved in glycolysis is hexokinase. If hexokinase is absent, there is another enzyme called glucokinase is also involved sometimes. Then glucose 6-phosphate is converted to fructose 6-phosphate. Fructose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So this is the most important reaction in this. The enzyme involved is phosphofructokinase. So phosphofructokinase has its own importance. It is known as a regulatory enzyme. Which is known as a regulatory enzyme in respiration means phosphofructokinase is known as a regulatory enzyme in the case of the glycolysis. So later fructose 1,6-biphosphate is converted to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is converted to 1,3-biphosphoglyceric acid. Then it is converted to 3-phosphoglyceric acid. then into 2-phosphoglyceric acid, then into 2-phosphoenol pyruvate, finally to the pyruvic acid. So finally 2 molecules of pyruvic acid is produced at the end of glycolysis. And what is at the end of glycolysis? The net ATP produced is 2. The number of ATP produced is 2. Number of NADH is also produced is 2. So like that, the final products are 2 molecules of ATP and 2 molecules of NADH. So this is about the glycolysis. So theory part, let us discuss some multiple choice questions. So let us see first question. So same thing, first question we were discussing. So partial oxidation of glucose without help of oxygen into pyruvic acid. So actually in the glycolysis the oxygen is not required, but oxygen is required in the Krebs cycle and as well as in the electron transport chain. So partial oxidation, so no doubt it is glycolysis. So glycolysis involves partial oxidation. In the process of glycolysis, so oxygen is not required. That is one of the important point we have to remember. So oxygen is not required without help of oxygen. So that is the most important point. Next question. Schema of glycolysis. So who is the scientist who has given this schema of this glycolysis? Schema of this glycolysis given by scientist. Name of the scientist is called as Ambran, Meyerhoff and Parnas. Next one. Which of the following is correct about glycolysis? So let us see, it is a common pathway for aerobic and anaerobic respiration. No, this is a correct statement. It occurs in cytoplasm. Yes, this is also right statement. Oxygen is not required for this process. Yes, especially for glycolysis, oxygen is not required. So that is the reason it is the correct statement. So all of this will be our right answer. Next question. So number of steps required to complete glycolysis. So exactly 10 steps. 10 steps are required. So it is a glycolysis is not a single step. So glycolysis involves multiple steps. It involves multiple steps, and it involves multiple steps with multiple enzymes. So the multiple steps involving multiple enzymes. So 10 reactions. So 10 steps requires 10 enzymes. It is a multiple reaction. Hi Komla, how are you? So welcome to Unacademy EAMCET YouTube channel. So we are only half an hour we have class per day actually. So we are about to end of this class. Yes, you are right. Is option C is answer. Hi. So Komla, so you can join our special classes, right? I hope you are joining. I have seen you previously. So join our special classes. Okay. So join our special classes. My special classes will be generally every day between 5 to 7 p.m. These special classes, you can check the timings on our app. So you can join those special classes. Next. In the plant, the end product of photosynthesis is, what is the end product of photosynthesis? That was the question. So what is the end product of photosynthesis? So certainly no doubt we have seen end product of photosynthesis is glucose according to the given equation. So excess amount of glucose is stored in the form of the starch actually. Then the enzymes which convert sucrose into glucose plus fructose. So the enzyme which converts sucrose into glucose plus fructose. So what is the name of the enzyme which converts sucrose into glucose plus fructose? That was the question. So if you see the enzyme, so certainly the enzyme is, it is the invertase. So invertase is the enzyme that converts sucrose into glucose plus fructose. Next. So glucose is converted into glucose 6-phosphate. So for this reaction, what is the enzyme is involved? That was the question. So when glucose is converted to glucose 6-phosphate is the first step. In the first step, the enzyme involved is hexokinase. Hexokinase is the enzyme that is involved in the process of this particular first step. Glucose is to convert to glucose 6-phosphate is by enzyme. The name of the enzyme is called as a hexokinase. Hexokinase is the enzyme actually. So Komla, today's class is only for 30 minutes, right? So we'll end up the class. Oh, yes. So glucose is going to glucose 6-phosphate. It is by first enzyme that is called hexokinase actually. Okay. So you can join our special classes. So you can check the app. So there is a link to how to join the special classes. So you can join the special classes and it will be for 60 minutes. Okay. Let's move to next question. One molecule of glucose on glycolysis. One molecule of glucose on glycolysis produce. So one molecule of glucose. So one molecule of glucose at the end of glycolysis, it is producing two molecules. Two molecules of pyruvic acid or pyruvate. So it is producing two molecules of pyruvate. Very good. So option A is right answer. Very good formula. So glucose is 6 carbon compound. It is producing the pyruvic acid. So two molecules of pyruvic acid. So this pyruvic acid is a 3 carbon compound. Next. Which of the following is an energy yielding process? So which of the following is an energy yielding process? That was the question. So which is producing the energy? So which is producing ATP? That was the question actually. So you can see here in option 3. So phosphoenol pyruvate. Phosphoenol pyruvate is converted to pyruvate. When it is converted to pyruvate, so ADP plus inorganic phosphate from phosphoenol pyruvate gives rise to ATP. So here ATP is produced. So that is the reason option C will be our answer. So next question. So pyruvic acid, the key product of glycolysis, can have metabolic fates under anaerobic condition. So under aerobic condition, it forms. So what are the compounds that are formed during aerobic condition? So that was the question. So under aerobic condition, what are the products that are formed? That was the question. So under aerobic conditions, it produces carbon dioxide plus H2O. If it is anaerobic condition, it produces lactic acid or can produce ethanol if it is an anaerobic condition. Okay. So anyway, this is end of today's session, students. So we'll stop here actually. So we have discussed how the glycolysis is taking place, and we have discussed a few multiple choice questions too. So in next class we'll continue with Krebs cycle. Day after tomorrow we'll discuss the Krebs cycle. So try to join at the time at 4 p.m. So before ending the class, so once again I would like to show our Unacademy long-term plan, students. So I suggest you to purchase these long-term plans. So 6 months plan which is costing around 10,125 rupees, and 12 months plan which is costing about 12,375 rupees, students. So this is about our Unacademy long-term plans. So I suggest you to purchase these plans, and you can use my code Rajendra Live to join our special as well as and purchase our Unacademy Plus subscription, students. So this is about our Unacademy Plus subscription, students, and this is about the today's topic discussion on glycolysis. In next class we will be coming with the Krebs cycle in the next class, that is on the day after tomorrow. So try to join those class, friends. Thank you all of you. See you in the next class.